Hello and welcome to the Manifestation Mastery course. This is video 6A, I believe. Remember, there's an A video and a B video. The A video is here on the free YouTube channel, and the B video is where I get into the nuts and bolts of hacks and techniques. That is in the B videos, which you can access by going to manifestation.thunderwizard.com. Okay, so this is 6A, and we're going to be talking about be careful what you ask for. Are you ready for real success? If you're seeking to understand the law of attraction, if you're seeking to understand how to manifest, then I can only assume that things need some improvement at the very least, or things have not been going at all the way you want, or somewhere in between. If things were working perfectly for you, you wouldn't be on this video. Now, I am with you. I am sharing with you what I have learned, which has turned this great concept of the law of attraction, which didn't work and then sort of worked and then, all that kind of stuff. And I've learned how to turn it into an actual law. They call it a law, which means that if you do this, this is going to happen. Like the law of gravity. You drop something, it falls every time, unless you're out, in the middle of space. But if you're walking around on planet Earth, we got this thing called gravity, which everything falls. It's a law. It happens every time. So the law of attraction, if it's a law, it should also be like that. It should work every time. So we're looking at the ways that the law of attraction can be thwarted. And we don't do this on purpose. It happens because, again, there's more to it than just thinking about what you want and having a positive feeling and have it come to you. As we've talked about before, when somebody is in alignment and when their unconscious mind is cooperating with them and they don't have any conflicts about what they're trying to manifest, then it works every time. Absolutely, every single time. So we have to take a look at what we can do to optimize our instrument, which is our body and our mind and our spirit. When we can get all of these things working in alignment, then the law of attraction will work every time. So, you've heard the phrase, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you wish for, right? Which sounds ominous. There's a reason for it. We joke around, be careful what you wish for, right? Because something ironic will happen, you wish for having all kinds of money, tons of money, and then all of a sudden now you have to become a recluse because now you're world famous and everybody's coming after you and wants your money, and you have to spend all your money on safes and bodyguards, and then the irony is that all of your money is going in to protect the money that you have, and the freedom you thought you were going to get is gone, and somebody says, careful what you wish for. But in my experience, there's a different scenario that happens, which is this is different than the other two scenarios that we've been talking about. The one where it just doesn't work for you, we already talked about that. The one where it starts to work and then it stops, that's different. This is altogether different. This is you start to do the law of attraction, you start to work it, and boom, things start to happen. Especially if you combine the law of attraction with the law of manifestation, and you do the things that I've been teaching you to do on the B videos. If you do those things very often, if things start to line up, boom, you will see sometimes immediate results. And I've seen this happen with people. And then what ends up happening is then you have this success backlash. It's sort of like an unconscious buyer's remorse. And then what ends up happening, you start to gain, here's a scenario that can happen. So again, let's go through the three scenarios of when the law of attraction sort of fails. One is it just doesn't work for you at all. We talked about that. The other one is it works and then it slowly peters out and it stops working or sort of sputters to it, and then you're sort of not really, anywhere. You're not poor anymore, but you're not really successful. You're still kind of missing it. And then there's this experience where you get what it is that you wanted, or you start to have that kind of success, and then just something catastrophic happens. You fall and break your back. You get in a car accident. You know, something catastrophic will happen. And or you will become gripped with fear. And then all of a sudden, I can't do this, and I'm not worthy, and all these other feelings start to crop up, and you become absolutely just, and people are coming in and they want, you know, they're ordering stuff or, you know, buying stuff from you, and oh my God, and you just freeze up. So this is a reaction to success. And it's an interesting one because you've got enough things working in your unconscious mind, and you are aligning with yourself on a spiritual level, that the universe is responding and saying, yes, here you go. Boom, right. Now you're in alignment. Here's the success. Here it comes. And it can be a very perplexing situation. And I've had, I can't tell you how many times that I myself have gone through this, but especially with people that I work with, people who have gone through a lot of trauma. This is what happens. Like if you've grown up in a really dysfunctional home, or you've had some kind of like, you know, outright trauma or violence or something along those lines. It doesn't have to be that dramatic, but, you know, some kind of dysfunction, major dysfunction. And then when you start getting the success, it's like you can't seem to align yourself with it. You can't seem to like fit into it. It's just, it feels wrong, and people become paralyzed. And I've seen this where I've worked with clients, and I can see objectively, I'm looking at them and I can see that everybody is seeing them in a different light. The universe is treating them as though they are successful and worthy. They themselves just can't accept it within themselves. It's just, they can't make the leap. It's frightening. It's absolutely horrifically frightening to them. And then they may do things very destructively. So I've shared with you what happens with, you know, poor people who live in double wide trailers who win the lottery, and they go from, you know, living on welfare to having multi-million-dollar settlements where they're just incredibly rich beyond their wildest dreams. They don't even know what to do with all this money. And they get this money and they think, oh, that's it, I'm going to be set for life. You know, who wouldn't think that? I would think that. And then we find out a few years down the road, not only have they spent all of their money, but they're now in debt. And they're back in a double wide trailer, and they're worse off than they were before. They owe taxes, you know, whatever it is. And this is a really extreme example of, you know, this success block, this fear of success. So this comes down to being able to align yourself, your identity, with what is being given to you externally. And this goes back to the story that we tell ourselves. Everything that you have in your life is based on the story that you tell yourself. I'm trying to think, you know, again, look at, look at bodybuilders, for example. You know, look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. That is not, you know, if he didn't lift weights, he would just be an average-looking guy. You know, there's really nothing amazing about him other than he lifted weights and took steroids. But what happened is that he realized the story he was telling himself about who he was. And if you watch, especially, you know, just recently he did a motivational speech where he talked about failure. And he talked about how people don't push themselves towards something because they're afraid they might fail. And he says, you are going to fail. That's part of what happens. And he went through and listed all of the failures that he's had. He says it's not about whether or not you fail. It's about whether or not you pick yourself up and you keep going. That's the only thing that matters. You know, when he won his last Mr. Olympia, he did it on a whim. You know, he wasn't really set up to do it, and nobody expected him to come and compete. And he really wasn't in the best shape of his life. There were people that were in better shape than he was and better prepared. And he showed up at the last minute and decided to compete, and he won. And he won for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, he's got these amazing genetics, and he's taller than some of the other guys that were, and when you look at the tall guy compared to a short guy, they always go for the taller guy. And he had his personality, and he had his flair and his posing. He knew what he was doing in his posing. He was very good at that. And of course, he had his reputation backing him, so he already had people wanting to vote for him. And so he won. And there's all this controversy about whether or not he should have won and all that. When it was all done, they were interviewing him, and the controversy was happening behind the scenes. Yet nobody really knew. Now everybody, who's into bodybuilding history, they know all the controversy that went on and all that. But when he did his interview right afterwards, he said, this whole idea of the most physically developed person in the world, he says, it's kind of silly, and people just take it too seriously. And of course, it's easy for him to say he won, but I have no doubt in my mind if he hadn't won, he still would have been grateful, and he would have congratulated everybody, and he had everything that he needed. He was about to make Conan the Barbarian, which was going to launch him into his career as an actor, movie actor, and he was already successful in business, and he was already, running and producing a lot of, bodybuilding. So he was already well on his way. He didn't need this. He could take it or leave it. And he got it, and it was because he didn't care. He didn't see it as being all that important. He saw it as being fun. And he went after it. And the people who took it really seriously, here's what happened. People who took it really seriously, the guys who should have won, who didn't have the personality he had and didn't have the genetics and were shorter than him, who, if you were to look at them just at their pictures side by side, you would say, oh yeah, that guy's in much better shape and much better definition and much better symmetry. But when you put him next to, the tall guy always wins. And he used that to his advantage. Those guys, they got all pissed off. Like the guy who got, I think, second or third, who was slated to be the next one, who was going to win. He had been winning for years. Frank Zane. Frank Zane is a legend. He's a legend for having this perfect symmetry. He's not huge. He's just chiseled, and he creates this beautiful, perfect, classical ideal of a man's physique. And he was slated to win, and he didn't. And he got second or third. And as soon as he went behind the stage after getting his thing, he smashed it against the wall. He had a temper tantrum. And then he didn't come back the next year. And the next year, Arnold wasn't there. And he could have taken it, and he didn't. And he looks back on it, and he realizes he made a mistake. He was protesting. He wasn't going to go. He took it too seriously. He took himself too seriously. This comes down to the story that you say about yourself. So when you achieve success, when you have been programmed to have whatever it is that you have that you may consider to be failure or whatever it is, less than what you want, when you achieve the success that you say you've been wanting, and the success that you achieve is completely out of proportion to the story that you have in your unconscious about yourself, there is this crisis. And you start to flip out. You start to panic. And why is it that you panic? Why is it that these people who win the lottery, why isn't that when they get the money, they don't go, wow, okay, I got to get used to all this, and let's get some, some accountants to come in and help us, and let's get it together, and yeah, we've got money, let's buy a new house, and then let's invest in this, and let's work towards our eventual. Why don't they do that? Why is it that they go crazy and they get addicted to drugs and start buying meth and start buying 20 cars and 70 houses and don't understand taxes and don't understand any of that stuff, and then they end up worse off than they were before? Why do they do that? Well, one is they don't, they need to educate themselves on what it's like to be rich, but more importantly, it's that the story that they have about themselves is that they're poor and that they're losers. They wouldn't say that. If you called them poor losers, they would get very upset and they would fight with you about it. That's not their conscious story. Their conscious story is, you don't understand. The world is against me, and I'm this, and the government and taxes, and that's the story they have in their head consciously. Unconsciously, the story is that somewhere along the line, they got the impression that they didn't deserve it, that they weren't worthy of the success. That our identity of who we say we are is what controls everything. Arnold Schwarzenegger, every time he went into the gym, people said, what makes you different than the other guy? The other guy's coming in and he's working out just as hard as you are. He's lifting just the same amount of weights. He's doing everything. He's having the same diet. He's doing everything that you're doing, and he didn't win. What's the difference? And he said, every time I went in there and I pushed myself to just torturous pain, he smiled. And he said, look around. All these other people, they have grimaces on their faces and they're feeling the pain. He says that whenever I did it, I would smile. He said because he knew every rep that he did brought him that much closer to becoming Mr. Olympia. Whereas the other guys were focusing on how difficult it was. So, I don't know that I would do any different than those guys. But I'm listening to him, and what I'm hearing him say is that he had this story about himself. It wasn't who he was yet. He was still just another bodybuilder working his way up through, and in a new country. He didn't speak the language, and he wanted, and he's working 3 jobs and all this other stuff. He's just some guy trying to make his way in the world just like everybody else. The difference is he has this story in his mind about who he is. And he is more comfortable with that story than he is with his present situation. I'm not trying to judge it. It's what you have been programmed. If you have been programmed to believe that you are not worthy of success, when success comes for you, you will sabotage it. And there's all kinds of ways to sabotage it. There is just becoming gripped with fear. There is manifesting all kinds of chaos. There is allowing family and friends and people to pull you away from your path. And there is just simply sabotaging your success. Getting your success and then destroying it once you have it, and then wondering what happened. And then you end up back where you were. It's because that identity that you have, whether it's positive or negative, what we need to understand is that we are living in what we perceive to be a frightening world. And our identity is our spacesuit. When you go off into space, if you land on the moon or Mars, you want to go outside the habitat, you're going to have to wear a spacesuit. Because if you don't, the elements will kill you. Like almost immediately, you'll die. Either it's, there's the pressure, lack of pressure will kill you, or the radiation, or the heat, or the cold, just the extremes. You don't have, like we have our Earth's atmosphere protects us from all that and keeps some kind of stasis. We can breathe. We've got protection from solar radiation, and we've got temperature control and all that kind of stuff. Once you get out of that, you don't have any of that. Those are the extremes. So your identity is your spacesuit. And when you have to change from one identity to another, then what you feel like you have to do is take your protection off, and you're now vulnerable to the elements. This isn't happening on a conscious level. Consciously, it's like, I don't understand it. Here's the money. Why aren't things working? Consciously, that's not. You may have a feeling of panic and not know where it's coming from. But consciously, you're not thinking that it's going to kill you. Unconsciously, that success feels like a threat to your existence. Because your story is your spacesuit. It is your protective spacesuit. Your identity. Even if your identity is that you're a loser, and that you're poor, and that you're unworthy, and that you're unlovable, and whatever your identity is, no matter how horrible it is, it's your spacesuit. Because at least it's comfortable, you understand it, you know who you are. When you take that spacesuit off, you have no idea who you are, what's going to happen. You feel like you're going to come apart. And so, talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger again, even though he wasn't Mr. Olympia for however long he wasn't, his identity was that he was Mr. Olympia. So that when he got handed that, he was like, yep, that's who I am. I am extremely successful, and he is. He's an extremely successful guy. He's an extremely successful businessman. He's a horrible actor. I'm an actor. He's a horrible actor. To his credit, he doesn't try and, play King Lear. He takes roles that suit his abilities, but he's a horrible actor. He sucks. But he's, one of the most famous, recognizable actors in history because he decided that's what he wanted to be. He decided that that's who he was next. He was going to be an actor, a very successful actor. And so when that success came to him, he took it. He had all kinds of failures along the way, and he just shrugged it off like he did when he was bodybuilding. If he lost, he shrugged it off and he went to the next one. I'm going to forget about this. Let's go to the next one. He didn't take himself too seriously. In other words, the story that he told himself, he didn't take himself so seriously that he couldn't take off his spacesuit and put on another one. So this is just a bunch of talk basically to come down to the idea that you have an unconscious idea of who you are. That determines what happens in your life. If you have this unconscious idea of whatever it is, being poor or failure or whatever, and you learn to do enough to align yourself enough, and you work the law of attraction well enough, and you do it in alignment with where your soul wants to go, success will come for you. Absolutely, without fail. Success will come for you. Whether or not you see it is one thing. You might not see it coming and you'll miss it and it'll pass you by. Or you'll see it coming and on an unconscious level you will see it as a threat to your existence. You will think that success will kill you. Let me give you another example in my life. Now, forgive me for getting all spiritual here. But I now have I have my tea. That's what that was all about. As you know, I make a living as a spiritual teacher and a mentor and a guide and a counselor and through YouTube. And I've embraced that, and I'm really working hard, and I'm putting out a lot of information, and I'm really working towards continuing my success and to reach as many people as I can and to help as many people as I can, which of course is going to bring me more financial success. But that wasn't something that I did very easily. I'm 55 now, and it's taken me 30 years to finally get comfortable with, and I'm still learning in this, trust me, I'm still learning, get comfortable in the story that I have about myself, which is that my new story is that I'm a world famous, effective, one of the most effective spiritual teachers and life coaches and counselors in the world. That's my new story that I'm working towards. So that wasn't something that I did very easily. And way back, probably 25 years ago, I think. 25 years ago, I was studying very hard in a lot of spiritual disciplines, and everybody that I worked with saw, wow, this guy's got some real potential here, and that was my life, my spiritual evolution and my spiritual practices, my energy practices and the esoteric, magical practices. This was my life. And I was working with one of my teachers, and we started, I don't know what we were talking about, but something started bubbling up inside of me, and he was talking about, you're a teacher. Now I remember it now. He says, you're a teacher. You're a healer. You're a master. And I started to weep. And he was like, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. He says, try to put words to it. I said, they're going to kill me. He says, who? I said, I don't know. They're going to kill me. And he says, this feels like it's some past life thing. So he gave me this tape to listen to, which I listened to as I was sleeping, which allowed me to access my unconscious, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have any real major dreams that night. But the next day, I got up as I did, and I was doing my yoga. And as I was practicing and doing my yoga, I don't know if I told you this story before. If I have, forgive me, but apply it to what we're talking about. So I'm doing my yoga, and I'm doing these spinal twists, and it's a really intense practice. All of a sudden, I had this waking vision. And I saw unfolding in front of me a previous life. I was a priest in medieval France, and I was being dragged through the streets by the townsfolk. And they threw me up against the church doors, and they nailed me to the church doors, and then they began to tear me to shreds over what I was teaching. Because I was teaching a lot of the same things I'm teaching now. You don't need a God up there. You yourself are God. And I was, of course, using it in context of Christian religion. I was interpreting Christian religion in order to fit that. And, of course, that was blasphemy, and those people were not ready for that. It was too threatening. And if my teaching had taken hold, then the church armies would have come and destroyed the whole village. So I was a threat to their survival. They had to get rid of me. I was a threat to their story, their communal story. So they had to get rid of me. No, that was a past life. That was a long time ago. You can talk about pretty much anything you want now. Nobody's going to, put you to death for heresy. But I was acting as though that was going to happen, that block. Now, I became aware of that block, and for the next 20 years, I struggled to accept my role as a master teacher. It was extremely challenging and frightening, and I really, really struggled with it. And so I had marginal success at best. In fact, I was poor and struggling all of my life up until very recently. And the only thing that changed was I embraced my identity of who I am. My spacesuit now is that I am a master teacher, and that I have a message that nobody else is giving, and this is a message that the world needs, and I need to get this message to as many people as possible. And this is how I make my living. This is my new spacesuit. So that's kind of the question you want to ask yourself. What spacesuit are you wearing? You don't have to like it. Just because you don't like being poor, or you don't like being miserable. Nobody does. Nobody likes being a failure. But is that your identity? if you honestly feel that way, that I shouldn't do it, that I don't deserve it, that nobody wants to hear it, that I'm a fraud, this is a big one. I'm a fraud, people will see through me, I don't deserve to charge for my services, blah, blah, blah. If that's your identity, even though you don't like it, it is still safer than taking your spacesuit off and being obliterated. Because that's what your unconscious mind thinks will happen. So, in the next video, we're going to talk about some things that we can do to change that. Ways that we can hack into the unconscious mind, and real simple things that you can do on a daily basis to change that. Now, it will take some work on your part. If you're willing not to take yourself too seriously, and if you're willing to have success and to live with it and to deal with the discomfort that might come when success comes to you, then you can change. You are built. You are wired to evolve. This is the good news. It may feel like this is a death sentence. It's not. You are wired to evolve. And just like Arnold Schwarzenegger, every time he goes and he lifted, every time he did that, he did one last rep, one rep more than he could have because he wanted that so badly. There are things you can do to change your story of who you are. And here's the good news. It's not like you have to take off one spacesuit and then be exposed to the elements while you're trying to put the other one on. You can change the spacesuit that you have. You can change it. It will magically transform into a new spacesuit, a new identity, and it might feel a little clunky at first. And that's okay. As long as you understand it. My experience is, as long as you understand what's going on, like if you can just explain to me what the discomfort is all about and explain to me that this is going to change, then I'm okay with it. You know, using again the bodybuilding example. You go to the gym, you work out. You know, I'm sore right now. I did chest a couple days ago, so my chest is sore. My chest is sore. So now if I hadn't gone to the gym and my chest, I'd say, what's wrong with my chest? Why is that so tender? Well, because I know that sore muscles mean that they're going to grow. I go, oh, this is good, and I can tolerate the mild discomfort of the sore muscles. The same thing will happen to your identity. Getting into that new spacesuit, it's going to be clunky, it's going to be weird, it might be really frightening, it might be fun, it might be, you know, who knows? It's going to be different than what you expect, and it might be an unpleasant experience at first, but that's just because you're just getting used to your new suit. And for me, and again, if you understand, oh, I'm uncomfortable because I just took a big leap in my career and my unconscious mind is adjusting and it's frightening and, oh, okay, this is good. As long as I know that, I can still keep taking action towards what I want and get comfortable with it. So in the next video, we're going to talk about things you can do on a daily basis which will help you to create a new spacesuit, a new identity, and how you can learn how to do that transition from one identity to the next and how you can get comfortable in it. All right, so I'll see you in the B video. If you're new to this, all you have to do is go to manifestation.thunderwizard.com and click on the link. There will be links in there along with the A videos, and you can go directly to it. I also recommend, by the way, using the manifestation course with the 5 rules to master the matrix. That again is a very practical way of looking at the laws of the universe, the laws of this matrix. And when you understand the laws of this matrix, you just follow, you know, the hacks that are in there. The universe responds, and then you don't have to analyze yourself. So we're attacking it on 2 fronts. In this video, I am talking about theory, but we're also looking at it from a psychological perspective. So on a psychological perspective, you can understand the mechanics of how the unconscious mind works. But what if you don't want to spend time analyzing, you just want to get to the nuts and bolts? Then that's what the 5 rules to master the matrix is all about. If you can master that, Along with this, you'll have a clear roadmap, and it really is, it's just you push A button, B button, C button, and things happen. And then you got to be able to deal with it. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to help you with in this series. Okay, so go to matrix.thunderwizard.com to get the 5 rules to master the matrix. Go to manifestation.thunderwizard.com and click on the links there to go and see the B videos, the deeper specific hacks on how to manifest. There's a lot more to come. All right, so talk to you soon.